All right. So welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us in breakout room number 8, which is clearly 8 is great. So this is the place to be. You definitely have picked the right session to join because you have from the Kentucky Department of Education's digital learning team, the one and only Ben Maynard, Laura Raganos, who will help guide you through this awesome resource that's available to everyone that they have worked in collaboration with districts and leaders across the entire state, Coaching Plus. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ben and Laura. Enjoy.
Jeff, thank you so much. Really glad to be here today. Been popping in and out of rooms. Really excited for today. I literally noticed a name from Fulton County and a name from Pike County. And if you know your Kentucky geography, you know that's a long way away. And I've driven that, most of it, at once. And so it's a long way away. And so to be able to connect like this, I love this event for that very reason. All the different, leaders with titles that do so many different functions throughout the district, be able to connect and share, all pushing toward the same goal is really a whole lot of fun. And so I see a lot of familiar names, even on our list today. I've seen and spoken to some already. And so I'm here with my teammate. And so this is one of the fun things that I get to do is I get to, Laura Raganos and I get to kind of bounce around the state. We've worked probably in some of your districts. And, today we wanted to be able to share this Coaching Plus resource with you. And you notice kind of in the session grid, it lines up in a sequence of kind of coaching resources. And today ours will not only be about coaching your teachers, right, but it's going to be around blended learning, which through the Office of OET, Office of Education Technology, as digital learning coaches, that's our spin, right? We're going to talk today about blended learning and how you can do that, how it lines up to PCEL standards, and how it fits your administrative role, but it also is going to fit into servant leadership and so many other aspects of what EdCamp is really about. And just briefly about me, and I'm going to kick it over to Laura, former elementary principal, middle school assistant principal, teacher, in smallish, average size districts, do a lot of different things. And so a lot of different experiences in a district that we've brought to this. We've been able to highlight some folks from around Kentucky doing this work just like you. And so we want to drop that in your hands today. And so, Laura, I'm going to kick it over to you to kind of get us started today.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. And thanks to everyone for joining. I see where Brandy mentioned that, we've been in Augusta, almost all the districts across the state in some capacity over the last 7 or 8 years. And so what I'm getting ready to show you is something that was developed actually 2 years ago. I said that yesterday, Ben. I was like, it's been 2 years, which, time flies, but sometimes the last 2 years doesn't seem like it's flying. But what you're getting ready to see is sort of a continuation of some of that support that we've provided to districts in years past. Years ago, Ben and I would go in and we would provide these onboarding and very initial trainings, if you will, to districts in order to learn how to use the technology and to integrate into your classrooms. Of course, in the pandemic hit 2 years ago, and we're like, oh my goodness, how do we continue to provide this support? And then we started pulling our resources together thinking, we've got such magical people across the state who are already doing these amazing things. Why don't we just start curating these resources and provide them in sort of a one-stop shop, if you will, which is exactly what we ended up developing and what you're getting ready to see pop up onto the screen. So this is the site Coaching Plus. And if you open up that document that was linked in the agenda, the matrix for today, you're going to see the link to Coaching Plus. It's coachingplus.pro. And so just really quickly here on the home page, you're going to see that it talks about what is the connection to digital instruction to design and the impact on learning. I have the honor of working with the digital learning coaches across the state, and you hopefully have some in your district. And if you don't, let's talk afterwards. And if you don't know if you do or not, please let me know. Please ask, just drop it into the chat and I'll tell you if you do. And if you do and you don't know who they are, you need to be connecting with those people for sure. Because what we are talking about is what is that impact on learning? And if we're not having a positive impact on learning, why are we doing it? Let's really be intentional about what we're asking our students to do. And so what you see here on our homepage is that Ben and I have worked very closely with these two national leaders across the state, Eric Schinninger. Many of you have heard of him because he's worked a lot with the principal cohort. And then Marcia Kish. If you're not familiar with Marcia, oh my goodness, you need to watch this video and get connected because she will blow your mind. And then down below that, two people that you may have heard of, and if you've not, you need to get connected with them as well. Dr. Marty Park is our boss at KDE, and he talks about how coaching is at the center of the work of every single thing that we should be doing. And then we have Jenny Ray, and for those of you with the P3 project, you know exactly who she is. She's been heading this up for quite some time. So we're super excited for these people to be right here on the homepage, making that connection for us and with us to all the things that you are doing in your school and making sure that it is having that strong impact. So across the top, you're going to see that we've broken this down into learning modules. Ben and I kind of struggled at first, like, what do we call these things? Because we don't want it to be, to feel like it's one more thing that has to be done, like, oh, let's do your thing during the day, and then after school or during your PLCs, you have to do this on top of. So, but learning modules is sort of where we landed. So just to let you know how you can navigate this site, I've got a couple of ways to get to the modules. I can actually go directly to one of these modules, or right here on this top one where it says learning modules. If I click on the word learning modules, you're going to see that it gives me a little summary or description of what is going to be in each of those learning modules. And there are 6 of them. So I'm just going to pause here for just a second and just tell you that if Laura knows this is not nobody else, but if I were to start at this new school and get my faculty and staff together, I would have them go through these modules. And that's exactly what some of our districts are doing. Some of our districts are looking at these modules and saying, hey, you know what? These are going to be our PLCs. Or, hey, this is going to be our professional development. And we're going to work through these a little bit at a time. Some districts are saying, hey, we're starting with that first one, building your blended course. Like, let's back up to the very beginning and let's just start with this very first one. And let's work through all 6 of these modules. And let's not skip a beat. There are other districts that are looking at these saying, you know what, I think we're doing pretty good on module 1, but man, we need help with that module 2. So let's spend some intentional time working through module 2. And we're going to look at those here in just a second. But down below, this is what's so super cool. What is that coaching connection? And if you zoom in on that, and I'm not going to because it'll go really bonkers on the screen right now, but if you've got it open and you zoom in on that, you're going to see things on there that you are so familiar with, people's work that you're familiar with, coaching processes that you're familiar with. So the purpose for having this on this page is that we don't want you to think of this as one more thing. It is the thing. And it's what's really going to stitch all of this together to help your staff make it make sense. So I'm going to pause for just a second. And Ben, where do you want me to go?
So let me interject this just quickly. I think if we probably in the chat, if we asked folks, like how many of you are on a NTI day today for weather or other reasons, some of you may be closed. Some of, if we asked how many of you have like an online, like virtual programmer academy, many of you could probably raise your hand, as most of the districts do at this point. And so, when we talk about blended learning, and I think as folks have probably looked just at the descriptions of the modules, you see things like HyperDocs, and you see, choice boards, and you see things about student voice and choice and path and all those things. You may be like, well, we have some of those things. Where does all of this fit? Well, the interesting thing is blended learning, right, is happening, Laura, like in person and online. Online virtual is probably happening all online. And then you've got some NTI remote strategies where it's, it's in today, out tomorrow. Some of it's on Google Classroom. I have 2 kids on an NTI day today that's on Google Classroom right now, right, doing some remote learning. And so what you're going to see is a lot of these strategies will kind of lend itself. Using a hyperdoc could happen in all 3 scenarios, right? And so I think it's important for you as leaders to understand that, yeah, we may have some different variations going on, but the instructional strategies overlap quite a bit. And I know it gets confusing for some folks, but you're going to see that, well, blended learning is really not our thing. Well, it probably is your thing and you just don't realize it. And so I think this has helped some districts do that. And so Laura, if you want to flip over to, I'm going to let you pick, like we've got 6 modules. I'm going to let you pick a module that we can, because I want to highlight the administrator connection that we've been able to make in any of the modules you want to pick.
Absolutely. So I love what you just said. Like some people are thinking, oh, we don't do blended learning. Oh, but yes, you do, especially in the last 2 years. Like that's what y'all are doing. You may not have known it, but that's exactly what you're doing, because sometimes you're in person, sometimes you're online, sometimes you have a little bit of both going on. So whatever that looks like, this is for you. And so I really want us to think about, as we're going through the rest of this site, I want you to think about taking the very best of the best pre-pandemic, and that's a word in our vocabulary now, isn't it? Pre-pandemic, like what was the best that you saw in your classrooms? And then take the very best of what you see going on the past 2 years and blend those. Blend those pieces, the best of the best. And that's when you're going to come up with your blended learning model for your building and for your district. I opened this one up because you mentioned choice boards. This one seems to be everybody's favorite because it's so relevant for kindergarten all the way through grade 12. So no matter what building you're looking at, this module, I don't want to say skip the others, but if you skip everything else and don't skip this one, then you're on track. Okay. So what you're going to see here on every single module, they're all set up the same way. You have 4 lessons, if you will. The first one being voice and choice boards. The second one, hyperdocs, third playlist, and then the last one, leveraging learning. So there's a short video, and when I say short, it's 5 to 10 minutes. Whenever I was asking our digital learning coaches to create these videos at the top, I was very intentional about saying, really walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. And what I mean by that is that you've got to keep the information in short little snippets. Nobody wants to listen to an hour-long video of somebody talking. And I'll just say, one example is the reason TikTok, I know that's not popular in education, but one of the reasons TikTok has become so popular is because they get straight to the point. It eliminates all the fluff. Like if you're watching a recipe, you don't need to see me pouring oil and measuring out flour. Just tell me, like, put the oil in the flour and keep on going, right? And so cut to the chase, get to the meat of the lesson and eliminate all the fluff. So 5 to 10 minutes, don't make a video any longer than that. So you're going to have the video up here, but here's where it starts getting cool, y'all. Right below that video, it says, you've got all of these other videos, but then you've got these other resources. Okay. And you've got all of these slide decks. So right here is the slide deck that is going to go along with that particular video. And the reason I'm showing you this is right here. As I tell my teachers and I tell the digital learning coaches, when you're watching that video, open up the slide deck. And as you go through this slide deck, y'all, anything that is blue is a hyperlink. Oh my goodness, I just skipped some. But everything that's in here, we have got hyperlinks galore through these slide decks. And if you like it, do you see this button up here in the top right says use this template? All you have to do is click on that button and it makes a copy of that and all of those other resources and it drops it in your Google Drive. You're done. So your teachers, your staff don't have to go looking for a ton of things and make things from scratch. It's already done for you and we just give it to you and it's all free. So you've got all of these videos and your 4 lessons tons of other templates. Y'all, look at those hyperlinks. Every single one of these has just so much stuff. All right. So the digital learning coach has started making these little videos and creating these slide decks and curating all these templates and resources to just push out and give to you. But then as I was working with Ben, he mentioned earlier that he and I have been around districts training. One of the things that he does is he works closely with you all. He works closely with the principals and the administrators. And so one of the pieces that was missing from this site was this administrator connection. And I was like, Ben, we've got to find some of these principals who are administering in their buildings all of these things. And y'all, I looked at the people who are presenting in the other rooms, and so many of these principals that are on Coaching Plus are presenting today. So it's like they are doing these things, y'all. And so they're making these connections. I'm not going to steal Ben's thunder. I'm going to let him tell you about this part because this is so relevant. I will just say this one thing though. I've not worked with a single district across the state who, after they've looked at this and they see this administrator connection, none of them has said, oh, that's not for me. In fact, it's been just the opposite. The minute I tell the principals about this section, they're like, oh my gosh, that solves all our problems. That's what I've been looking for. So Ben, tell them what's in there that they're going to love.
So Laura, we were able to connect a kind of a principal example to each of the modules, because leading instructional initiatives in the building, especially right now when things just kind of happen so quickly, and you had teachers what felt like just grabbing this and pulling this down and putting this in, and like, listen, as a principal, assistant principal, instructional leader in the building, that was really hard to kind of keep track of, right? Do you need to know every single detail? No, but things were happening so quickly, like the quality, you weren't sure always what was happening to plan. So one of the questions I get routinely is, right, how do we know that, the quality of learning that's happening, whether it's on, on an NTI day or online virtual or through blended learning, is quality? Well, wrap the same quality structures around it, the same learning strategy, and let technology let these digital tools, let these devices be a vehicle to be able to make it more efficient, give students more opportunities. And that's exactly what Missy Davis talks about here in the third one. There's an example of another choice board, a link to the Future Ready Principal framework. And she talks a lot about, hey, leading this was not exactly easy, but here's how we went about it. And here's what we learned. And here's how it has changed things, right? And she does a great job of kind of saying, hey, like, I didn't know everything, but we learned to work together in a group and learn from one another. And really, that's what you're going to find about blended learning, about all of these strategies, is nobody's the one expert. It's going to take all of you together and be cohesive in this in order to kind of move it forward so that you can determine like what strategies are working across grade levels, across content areas that are having a really good impact. And so we were able to do that across all 6 modules, which we're really, really pleased about. And so I invite you to take a look at those, scrub through if you want, hit the highlights, but I promise you, it's going to make you feel like, hey, I'm not the only one in this boat. We're in this together, and I've got something I can learn. And all of these folks, we've put their email address, their Twitter handles, all those things. They're all willing to talk to you about how they did it, share even more resources that they may have not even included here. And it's been, Laura, you're right, it's been a while. So they've actually developed some new things. And so I invite you to take a look at that administrator connection as you kind of, continue this journey forward.
The selling point, I think that as you all watch these videos, there are 2 things that Ben was extremely intentional about having these principles include in their video. The first one, they will say, like in Missy in this one and all the other principles and all the other videos, they will make the connection for you that says, hey, if you all are doing these 4 things up here, then here's the connection to P-Cell. These are the P-Cell standards that these 4 lessons are hitting. So if your teachers are doing this, and as an administrator, you're doing this part down here, here are the PSEL standards that you're hitting. Now, here's the second one, and this is the selling point for most of the principals. It also tells in here what teacher framework standards are being hit. If your teachers are doing these things up here, then it's like, oh, this is whenever they're hitting 2B or 3A or 4C or whatever the case may be. And so many times as an administrator in years past, we've looked at some of these things with the use of technology and we're like, I think that's what they were doing, but I'm not really sure. I think they meant this, and I think that connects to the standard, but man, I'm not so sure. And so it's really clearly defined in this administrator connection as to what you're hitting if you're doing these things. Or here's another way to use this. If you've got a teacher on his or her professional growth said, hey, I really need to work on 3A or 2C, then guess what? Come back to Coaching Plus, listen to these administrator videos, and it says, hey, this one really hits on whatever. Then you can send your teachers back to this to watch some of these videos, to pull in some of those resources and begin using those in order to professionally grow. You know, too many times we ask our teachers to come up with their professional growth plan, but we don't help them get to that growth point. Right. So having all of this combined in here, I will show you this next one. And I'm super excited about this because we're talking about blended learning. Holy cow, y'all. How do you blend? Let me just say, module 1, really quick. You're going to start to see this growth and this build on this in this site. Module 1, if I were starting ground level and I had to make my brand new curriculum map and all my pacing guides and create a template for them to use and talk about a learning management system, that's in module 1. Module 2, we talk about starting to blend that learning. Module 3, and that's in your lesson plan, sorry. So how do you blend your lesson plans? Module 3, talking about a piece of your lesson plan, like those choice boards and hyperdocs. Module 4, we talk a little bit about social emotional learning, but we also talk about the fact that our students are extremely social people. Like if you don't know that, then you don't have kids at home because your kids are so social. And so how do you take those skills? And those are skills, y'all, that they have. They know how to do things. How many of you probably learned how to do something from your child or from one of your students, right? So they are social. So how to take those social skills and use them in an educational setting. So there are ways to do that. And then 5, the one that I'm on here, is delivering it. Like, how are you delivering all that stuff then? You've made it and created, but now how are you going to truly blend all of those pieces into a really nice blended learning environment? So what are your foundations of pulling all that together? How to make strong videos? Flipped classroom is one, but there are others inside that module besides just the flipped classroom. And then your video conferencing. My goodness, your teachers are video conferencing like none other, especially for those of you who are home right now. And so again, it goes down here and it makes a connection. I saw Jill, she was in another session just the last round. And so she's got stuff in here too about, synchronous and asynchronous and whatnot. And then finally, what are your students making and creating? Y'all, that's what education is. We instruct, we teach, but in the end, what are your students making? How are they demonstrating what they know? We ask our students to demonstrate. Sometimes that's in an activity. Sometimes it's in a project. Sometimes it's on a test. What are your students doing to show that they understand? And so this module right here is super, super cool. For those of you, Jeff, you can thank me later. For those of you who know STLP, then, and Jeff is on our team and he's the one that's moderating this session. This module right here is so powerful. So how do you take all 5 of those modules and build up to the point where your students are demonstrating their understanding with the use of technology, which also includes technology standards. And for just a quick plug on that, technology standards, those are required. There's a legislative regulation around them. And so technology standards are regulated kindergarten through grade 12. So we all have to be doing, it's not an option. Those aren't optional standards. Those are a requirement. So you fulfill those right here in module 6. All right, I've done a lot of talking, Ben, so now it's your turn.
Laura, I actually think, I don't know how much time is left. I have 3 or 4 minutes. I did want to give an opportunity because we have, 14, 15 folks in here, and there's a lot in this site and, to explore. And so want to be able to field any questions, comments, or things from our crew that's tuned in today. And also, if there's other ways that we can help, if there are ways that we can, schedule a one-on-one with you, your school, your district, whatever it may be, we're certainly willing to do that. So if anyone has any questions, comments, please let us know. We'll be glad to take any questions now.
Yeah, and drop those either in the chat, or I think y'all can unmute. Just feel free to unmute and just ask. And maybe you just have a question like, I don't know if we have a digital learning coach. If you don't know, then reach out and make sure you're utilizing those people. Make sure you're utilizing those. Like after you go into a classroom, if you've observed a teacher who might have struggled with the use of blending, then reach out to your digital learning coaches, because that's something that I work with them every single month on doing, is blending their instruction a little bit more effectively. And so they're getting pretty skilled. Make sure you're pulling them in to start working with those teachers who might need a little bit more tender love and care.
And Laura, if nothing else, I know as a principal, I always like to grab up some resources to be able to, hand out to teachers at different points in time. And so guess what? You're walking away with literally hundreds of things that you could send out in your weekly emails, your Google Classrooms, your hubs, whatever it is, to be able to start providing some ready-made resources, templates, things that are working around the state in our districts. And so,
real quick question. How many of you, and just drop it in the chat, just say me or yes or whatever. How many of you have a digital learning coach? And if you do, so that can be one question. So just me, yes, or I don't know. Yes, you do. Augusta does have one, Brandy. If you're not sure, that's okay too. But how many of you have heard of Coaching Plus then from your DLC? Absolutely, Jackson County does. You've got a phenomenal team. Like Rhonda Thompson built a strong team in Jackson County of DLCs. How many of you have heard of Coaching Plus then? Because your DLCs have been working through it. I'll just tell you, each month this year, we've looked at one module. Like August, we looked at module 1. September, we've dove into module 2. October, we jumped into module 3, and so forth and so on. Awesome, Brandy. So they've been digging into it. So they're prepared. They're prepared to help you. So make sure you're leveraging them.
Well, Jeff, I think we'll turn it back over to you, buddy.
Thanks. I did have one quick question before you guys jumped off. If someone wanted to get their school involved with STLP, the student technology, just kidding. Guys, great resources. Listen, I know that you all are pouring through this, and I have said to Ben and Laura multiple times that I hesitate to ever show this Coaching Plus resource to folks in anything I do, because I know that any training I'm doing, immediately everyone is gone and they are diving in both feet. They're not listening to a thing I say, but definitely jump out there, take advantage of that. Thank you, Ben and Laura, for joining us this morning. And thanks to everyone for participating in the chat and in the window. Great job. I think we have a quick little break before our next session, and I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks, guys.